Okay, today I'm going to show you soldering, and I'm going to show you 3 different kinds of soldering. We have sweat soldering, we have pick soldering, and butt and joint soldering. To start with, we're going to need a boric acid and alcohol solution. So I've put some boric acid into a clean jar here, and I'm going to add some denatured alcohol to create a solution. This solution acts as a fire coat to protect your metal while we're doing soldering. Make sure that once you've filled your jar that you move this away because it's very flammable. So I dip my pieces in the boric acid and alcohol solution, and as I said before, this acts as a fire coat to protect the metal against oxidation during the soldering process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get everything ready so I can just fly through all of this. Okay. So I have all my pieces there, and I cover that. I move it away since it's flammable. So when you're soldering, we have 3 different temperatures of solder. There's hard solder, there's medium solder, and there's easy solder. Each one of these corresponds to a different temperature. So the hard solder is the highest melting temperature. So this is the solder that I want to use on my very first soldering joints. I've cut up some solder right here. Actually, I'll cut up a little bit more. Some little ones. So I don't want to cut my solder too big. I want it to sort of correspond with the size of the piece that I am working with. So this solution right here, this is flux, and we put this directly on the joint where our solder is going to go. So I have a little itty bitty piece of solder. You might want to zoom in, Bri. I have an itty bitty little piece of solder right there. This is the butt solder that I'm doing right now. Okay. To turn on your torch, you want to make sure that everything's tight. Here, I have the gas tank already turned on, it's already opened. And I turn on the torch just so I can hear a little bit of gas, and then I light it with the striker. I make sure my hair's tied back, and I put my safety goggles on, although that's not going to work right now.
I'm going to zoom in now.
Okay. Alright. I'm going to move these aside, ignite them. That's the denatured alcohol burning off right there. And I'm going to go ahead and start soldering these 2 wires together. So when I'm soldering, when I'm first heating up the metal, I make sure that I don't shock the solder so it jumps off the piece. So I warm it up gently by going around the outside of it until I see the flux sort of bubble up and hold the solder in place. I solder with the torch in my left hand and a soldering pick in my right hand because I'm right-handed. And this way I can move hot things if I need to with my right hand. So I'm heating up the piece, I'm heating it up very evenly. And that solder is going to ball up and then it's going to flow. Okay, it's going to ball up, there it goes, and then it flowed. Okay, and now you have a nicely soldered piece of wire. So that's butt soldering. Alright, the second piece, what I'm doing over here is going to be sweat soldering, and I'm going to pre-melt, solder onto this and connect it to that. And to do that, I'll just turn off the flame and then pick up my solder and go ahead and start putting that on there. This is a bigger piece, so I can cut bigger pieces of solder. I want to make sure there's solder all around the edges. Okay, so I'm ready to go. I can put some in the center, but I don't feel it's necessary on this piece. I light the torch. Okay, this is a bigger piece of metal, so it's going to take more heat. So I turn the torch flame up. Again, oops, I forgot to do the flux. So I stop, go back, put some flux on there.
Explain where you're placing it.
I'm putting the flux directly on the solder to keep the solder pieces clean. If you have a brush, you can go ahead and brush the solder all over the piece of metal. Keep all that clean as well. All right, turn on my torch, point it away, turn up my flame. Okay. You see the flux bubbling up. Okay, once the flux bubbles up and it's holding the solder in place, you can move your tip of your flame directly onto your piece. That's the hottest part of your flame, is right there. I'm trying to keep the metal nice and even. There it goes. It balled up and it flowed. Okay. Very good. This piece is hot. Now I'm going to put it down, face down on this one, because that's where I want to solder it to. Again, this is sweat soldering. At this point, I think I'm going to flip this over. The mass of these is very similar, but usually I want the heavier piece up on top because the heavier piece heats more slowly. So I'm going to do it from the back. Okay, I'm going to heat that up. And when I think that it's hot enough, I'm going to push down with either my tweezers or my soldering pick, okay, to make sure that I have a good joint. Alright, and I flip it over, and my two pieces are soldered together. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you, is how to pick up a piece of solder, put it on the metal, and then bring another piece of metal on top of it. And this comes in real handy, like if you're soldering like earring posts or something. So, first I need my solder. I'm moving, since this is my second solder joint on this piece, I'm moving to the lower temperature solder, which in this case would be medium. And I'm gonna cut a piece. Now this piece is small, so I don't need to go as big as I was last time. I'm going to put some flux on that. Alright, I don't need as big of a flame because I'm just doing 2 pieces of wire. Okay, my solder's right here. So I'm going to pick it up with my soldering pick. I'm going to melt it, ball it up, pick up that piece of solder, place it right where I want it. Okay, so that's right where I want it. And now when that solder flows, I'm going to bring this wire right down on top. Heat up that wire too, 'cause it's kind of heavy. There it goes. Did I get it? No. Pretty, but I got it. Okay. And I can quench that. There you go. So I'm going to quench these in the water. And now they're ready to go into the pickle to be cleaned. The pickle cleans away any of this oxidation that is on the metal. And also cleans away some of that boric acid and alcohol and the flux that we have on there. So there you go. Thank you.